Hello, this is Mark with Journey of Recovery. Sorry that I have not put anything out in the last few days. It's been leading up to the internment for Brandy and Hannah today, and it was a rough morning for sure. We had appreciated the folks that came out in a rainy day, but it did clear at the start of the service. The next 20 minutes, we didn't have any rain, and then after we were all done, it started back up again. And boy, I tell you, it is very real when you're at the internment. And even though the remains were in boxes, it's tough, because they're there. And so it's been a very exhausting day. But I really came home and took a nap and went out and did some retail therapy. Probably not healthy, but I didn't spend a lot of money, which is good. Although I couldn't say that a little bit earlier in the week, but I'll talk about that maybe one day. As we look at, again, how do you recover from all of this? And you're wondering, what in the world is this picture up here? Well, this was a course that I taught when I was at the 301st Fighter Wing on the Resilient Airman, and I really, first is focusing on PTSD and how that PTSD occurs, kind of an educational thing. I remember that was the first iteration, and then there were some challenges from some of the commanders, including a very good friend of mine named Max Stitzer, who said, "Okay, it's all good and well, and we understand all that, but how can you do, what can you do before a traumatic event happens? And then most importantly, how do you recover from it?" And that's the purpose of this course. So I sat down after that particular week with the senior leaders that I took through this course, because I wanted to teach, get all the airmen in our wing to go through it. I don't think we had a lot of them go through it, but needed the commander's buy-in, the senior leader's buy-in, and they gave it, but they wanted some adjustments, and the adjustments were, let's focus on positivity. And so this was the course that I did, and I started off I want to do this today. I hope I can keep it to hopefully shorten it a little bit, because I am still a little tired and all that kind of stuff. But I want to define resilience. Again, I'm going to do a number of different things with this podcast. I certainly spent some time going through 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. And so I'm going to try to do some different things. And again, maybe do some interviews, maybe show a video, and talk about it. There's a lot of flexibility that I can have, as really the whole journey of recovery is the journey of resilience. And I started off this teaching with this picture, and I asked the folks to kind of look at this, and I know you've been looking at it. And I would ask, tell me about these two guys. What do you see when you look at them? And I don't know if you can see or notice. These are two very obviously very battle-hardened Roman soldiers. They have heavy armor on. They look older, so they're veterans in life. They're trained soldiers. You notice the scar, a really bad scar up here with this guy. And obviously he's been in combat before, and he's been injured horrifically. And this guy probably has seen a lot. And, you notice a few things. You notice they are focused. They are battle-scarred, but they are functioning in whatever operation they're involved in this particular picture. But there's a lot that's gone on, inside these two individuals. If this were a real picture of, obviously this is, these aren't pictures from the Roman era, but if they were, we would obviously know that these are battle-hardened people who have endured a long string of battle experiences, and therefore, you look at them in this picture, and then you go back to when they were 8 or 9 years old, and you probably, there's probably been a massive change as they entered into military service and then get on through their life and start their first battle, and then the successive battles, dealing with loss, dealing with friends, dealing with who knows all what, but obviously these two have dealt with it. So let's take a look at resilience, and in this particular one, I'm not going to show the video, the YouTube video. If you want to YouTube Stretch Armstrong, it was a toy that I had as a kid, and when I started teaching this, I thought about getting one, but they're worth thousands of dollars on eBay. You can't find these guys anymore, but the point of Stretch Armstrong was you can, like this kid's doing, you can stretch that guy and he doesn't break. Now, some people figured, just cut him open to see what was inside. And of course, it was very poisonous chemicals back in those days, the good old days, right? But the point about this toy was that you could pull it and stretch it and it would come back to its original shape. And I think for the initial years that we, talking about resilience and talking about dealing with post-traumatic stress, not the disorder, but the stress, and going through tragedy, I think it was misleading because we did, on one hand, it was successful because you would ask, define resilience, and the answer would be the ability to bounce back, which means it implies going back to one's original state, as in the Stretch Armstrong thing. The problem is, in real life, we don't return to the original shape after we have gone through loss, disappointment, hurt, trauma, all those kinds of things. Our life changes radically, and many people wish that they could return to the original shape that they were in. That was part of my problem back after my deployment. Before that I was a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. I was pretty light, and in my demeanor, and my brother noticed the changes. Brandy noticed the changes, and I became a much more serious person, much more, obviously entered into depression and anxiety, which I still suffer from, and in addition to the disorder, because I didn't get any help. We'll talk about that another time. And that's just the reality, but I lamented the fact that I was not the same individual. And a lot of problems came from that, and we'll talk about it. But the big part of dealing with resilience is the incorporation of which requires acceptance. We've talked about that already, of trauma and loss. And that is a big hurdle to step over, is acceptance. And then an even harder task, the taller mountain. I think acceptance is the foothills of recovery. And that's the acceptance piece, and then incorporation of that event and recognizing it and allowing it to strengthen oneself, and take us to a different place in our life. Our new, I think the phrase is the new normal, but there's nothing normal about what has happened. But I get the point. It's the new reality, maybe the new existence that grafts in our experiences and grows from them. But it is not bouncing back to an original state. It is growing through trauma, growing through difficulty. That is the process. And so, again, different definitions of resilience. Notice here, you can see kind of here too, obviously this definition, return to an original state, elasticity, which is Stretch Armstrong. You can kind of see that, right? But here's one way to look at it, and maybe it's not the best one, but the strengths of an individual, both inborn, so that's what we come with, and developed. This is through proper training and understanding, which is a part of what I'm going to do with this podcast. Not just the physical, social, and mental aspects of resilience, but the spiritual as well, that enable one to respond well to adversity, including the capacities to perform optimally, prevent stress-related conditions, which, in other words, preventing disorder to occur out of post-traumatic stress, recover faster and more completely, and then maintain and improve peak comprehensive fitness, which is a holistic understanding. So as I mentioned, the 4 areas of resilience, which is mental, social, and physical, surrounded and held together by the spiritual. So some assumptions that we have that I think that we need to understand about ourselves, that we're capable of. This is our every human's capability. We do have a measure of resilience. It's built into our DNA. For example, when you and I were little, I mean very, very little, some of us might have put our hand on a stove and we burned our hand. And of course, after that, we learned a new normal. There was a small traumatic incident. We recoiled, or pulled our hand back, and then it hurt. So that's the trauma. But then we very rapidly, especially when you're little, the body has an incredible capacity to heal. And we also learned a number of things to never put our hand back on that burner again. That's a resilience piece. Our resilience can be overwhelmed, though, by the nature and the measure of the incidents that we go through. Resilience can be enlarged or can grow through training and practice of the things that we're going to talk about in this podcast. Anyone can learn to be resilient. And it's just a matter of adjustment. The big piece, it takes acceptance and then incorporation of the event into our life, and then we can grow from it, and we can learn methods and tools by which that we can operate with the events and experiences that we had. We can have our health and performance improve, and then a highly resilient individual, in other words, someone who has strengthened all 4 of those areas that I've mentioned to the utmost that they can. Again, it doesn't make anybody invincible, and it doesn't make them impervious to anything. I mean, we cannot be 100%. Even these guys back up here, one well-placed arrow can kill them. They can have as much armor that they, and again, this was the whole thing through warfare. We try to minimize casualties in war through technology, but even the thickest armor, like for example, in the Middle Ages, the French, for example, the Battle of Agincourt, the French, they had their knights with all this armor, but they were defeated heavily because of a new weapon that had come about called the English longbow. And it allowed these arrows to penetrate this very, very thick armor. Anyway, that's another kind of the military stuff. But we cannot, through our efforts, we cannot make ourselves impervious. And a lot of people, especially guys, think that they can handle anything. And you can't. You can be the toughest dude on the planet, and then the wrong thing happens, the wrong time, and everything can shatter. But it's the individual that has strengthened their 4 areas the most that has the best chance at rapidly accepting, rapidly integrating, and then rapidly recovering from the traumatic event itself. So we've already mentioned that. There's a, and I want to mention this too. So we all experience post-traumatic stress, and a lot of people will misnomer that as disorder. I have PT. You hear it a lot from people. I have PTSD from that event. That's not true. In fact, you would never claim that. It was something that if you had it, you would never claim it. What is true is that every negative experience produces post-traumatic stress. Okay? The mental disorder is an individual that refuses to get the assistance that they need, and that experience becomes entangled into their mental, the depths of their mental state, socially, physically, spiritually, for a long period of time. They will not admit it. No one will admit it that they are at a point beyond their capacity and capability to do something. I mean, an individual that says, "Well, I have PTSD from that," just some, loud noises or whatever, they have experienced post-traumatic stress. But the disorder is a whole different thing altogether. That is far more nefarious. No one should, and no one the disorder is preventable if the environment is healthy to seek mental health, to seek spiritual help. It's when the individual doesn't get any help that they can run the risk of negatively hindering in their life and succumbing themselves to a disorder that they'll carry with them the rest of their life. Post-traumatic stress disorder is something that no one can recover from. You can learn how to deal with. You can learn methodologies to help mitigate and manage. You can get medication, and you can get certain practices to help you delve deep down into to try to dismantle these things. But it's too far gone at that point, and that's why it's called a disorder. But the wonderful thing is that when we learn methods of understanding and methods of how do we deal with the traumatic experiences that we have, the less likely then that we will develop a disorder, which is going to require a lot of professional help, medication. It's going to require a long trail of recovery, and that's why we need to. I think everybody across the spectrum, whether it's a general practice, a general, I forgot the name of it, the doctor that your primary care doctor, to the psychologist, to the psychiatrist, to the minister, to supervisors at work, to parents, everybody across the chain of that is responsible for taking care of another human being needs to be trained and understand the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress, along with how do you then help that individual get connected to help so that disorder can be avoided altogether. Now, so those are all assumptions. There are strengths to resilience, and this is where I want to finish up today. I guess I'm going to be over 10 minutes. This is a really cool piece of Japanese writing, and it is the Japanese word for resilience. It means elasticity, flexibility, and adaptability. That's what the word in Japanese means for resilience. The Japanese are a highly resilient culture. And a lot of it has to do with some of their religious practices, mindfulness, acceptance, all those kinds of things. But the Japanese word suggests having the power. So notice that word there, power, which is power is tied to capability and capacity, to recover, to restore, to rehabilitate. And this is the essence of resilience in life. The first two characters from the top to the bottom are a word that means to reinstate, to resume, to restore, to recover, to regain, to rehabilitate. The last character, the one on the bottom, means strength or power. And so that is an individual that is very well prepared in life to handle, to be able to handle when traumatic events happen, because we have no control over when they happen. In the military, it was the bullet with your name on it. It was the randomness that impacted people. Someone to your left or to your right could get injured, but you didn't. And you have no control over it. Or a fireman that can deal with a lot of things, but they go into a burning building and they see a child or a baby there. That is that bullet that's going to get through every bit of preparation and mental toughness that they have, and it can affect them in a very, very negative way. Police officers, first responders have problems with this all the time when they see children involved in accidents and are victims of crime and all that type of thing. It really does mess one's head up. And again, in many of those cultures, the idea to get mental help is not, and I would say even in Christianity, to try to seek out mental help, there is a stigma that we have got to break that barrier down to encourage people. And people will say, they're just learning. Those people are not Christians, and they're not learning. They don't look at the Bible, and the Bible does talk about this stuff. But I will tell you, I know from my own experience that I did not have the capability or capacity to deal with a number of things for my deployment, and it took a trained, wonderful psychiatrist that didn't lead me down into the depths of hell and the Satan's precepts and let me do what I wanted to do. It was hard and difficult, but they were ways so that I could learn. The first strength of resilience, and this is my favorite football player of all time, Billy Kilmer. This was I think one of the early Super Bowls. I can't remember the number. Getting tackled, getting wiped out. That was typical for Billy Kilmer. But the first strength of resilience. Well, actually, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop there, and we will bring up the next episode, I think next week maybe, and talk about the strengths of resilience. And so I wanted to define and look at key assumptions, and I guess this will be a longer discussion. I don't want to break it up, but thank you so much for joining in. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others. I hope it's helpful, and I hope it's meaningful to anyone that's struggling out there, or maybe you've been dealing with something. Again, please write in the comments any questions or statements, and I'll make sure I answer them there. And if not, I can. If it's a really a question that would benefit the entire group that may be watching, I'll definitely deal with it or talk about it first in the next podcast. But thank you all very much. God bless you, and we'll see you next time on Journey of Recovery.